broadcasting live from high atop Scott's social media studios in the heart of the Cedar City, just outside of America's Music City. This is SEC Football Review with your hosts, Michael Clay and Jared Scott. Take it away, Michael.
All right, Jared. How's it going, man? You doing well?
Man, I am excited about this week.
Yes.
Some exciting matchups this week, Michael. I tell you, this is an SEC season to remember, if there's anyone to remember, because it's something I don't know that I've ever seen before.
I agree. It definitely could be. I think there's a hidden storyline that could come to the surface pretty quickly, especially with a team that may be a surprise. I don't know. The rest of the SEC might know, but nationally, I think it's a surprise. And I think you probably know who I might be talking about.
Oh, we're not talking about those basketball players in Kentucky, are we?
Yeah, they seem to have a starting five that is unlike any other they've had lately.
How in the world does a basketball team like Kentucky make it to number 17 in the country in an East Conference that has been traditionally been ruled by powerhouses? I don't understand it, Michael. I just don't get it. Where did this come from? Who is that coach over there at Kentucky, Michael?
Mark Stoops, the brother of Bob Stoops, who just retired, I guess you could say, from Oklahoma year before last.
Oh, boy. I tell you. So Oklahoma still has some surprises, and now those surprises are in the SEC.
Yeah, in the name of a brother there. So Bob Stoops was too scared to come to the SEC, but his brother has come, and he's making a little noise.
Well, at the rate things are going at Tennessee, Bob Stoops, you are welcome to come to Tennessee, my friend. Welcome to come to Tennessee. I'm really, really upset with what happened last week. I'm really heartbroken, but I'm not going to obsess about it throughout the whole show. I promise. Okay, I'm going to try my best not to obsess about it. Okay, let's leave it at that.
And Bob, if you don't come to Tennessee to coach UT, you're more than welcome to come to Lebanon to sit in one Saturday with us on this show.
I'm glad I'm not the only person pitching the show now. So now we've got Bob and Peyton coming and Misty Blake. Misty, we love you. We can't wait to have you on the show. I'm glad I'm not the only one begging anymore. Have an M&M there, Michael.
Let's see what happens.
Let's see what we get today.
I was going to say this would start which team we'll talk about first, but I don't think there's a team that's green.
Do we have any greens? In Florida is probably the closest we get to a green with the dang Gators. And when we look at Florida, good Lord, what happened last week, right? So is this really where we're at right now? Is it because Tennessee is such a problem, or is it because Florida is a surprise? I don't know. The reality of it is that what was Florida's game last week, Michael, prior to the week of Tennessee? Who did they play?
I think they played.
Was that Kentucky that they played the week before?
No, I think that was 2 weeks ago. They played Kentucky, and that's where they got beat at home, which was a surprise. And I don't know. I think
Kentucky story all over again. That line is just starting to ring true. In fact, let's take a look. We'll come back to the schedule for today. I know we love to talk about the schedule, but this is just too much of a story to pass up. We've got Alabama and LSU leading in the West. What a shock! Not those are very good teams, and they're very consistent performers. But in the East, what a story we have. Georgia at a 2-0 conference record and Kentucky at a 2-0 conference record. So the truth of the matter is that Kentucky, if they happen to continue their track record, could potentially face a Georgia and could potentially go to the SEC championship.
Yeah, and ever since there's been, I guess since '93, the East and the West, I don't think Kentucky's ever been in the SEC championship game. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty certain they haven't. So that would be a big shock, a big surprise.
All those Georgia fans out there are hating us right now, Michael, that we would even propose that Kentucky could potentially beat Georgia.
It's still an outside shot, but, I mean, it's worth talking about because if you look at it's still early, but you look at 2-0, it's not like Kentucky beat the bottom. They beat an Arkansas and Vanderbilt or Missouri or something like that. They beat Florida on the road at Florida, and then had a 14-ranked Mississippi State come in last week. And so, I mean, these wins are legit wins. It's not like beating up the bottom of the SEC.
It's so not like beating up the bottom like Tennessee. Beating up on a Tennessee that's at the bottom. How depressing is that? But
never thought we'd say that either. Is there a changing of the guard maybe?
I'd like to think not, but we do have some drama going on, and that makes for a lot more to talk about. That's for sure. So let's go back and look at these games that we've got for the lineup. So Louisiana Lafayette versus number 1 Alabama. I don't even know that there's much to talk about. Is there even a line on that one, Michael?
Yeah, there is. I'm surprised that there is. It's pretty interesting, I guess. It's about the only interesting thing this game's going to have. It's 49 points.
Why would they even have a line? Is it because Alabama's number 1? Is that what it is? So Alabama has to outscore by more than 49 points to move up in the rankings to what? Number 0.5? I don't know.
Well, no. It's all just betting. They just need to beat Louisiana Lafayette by 49 points or more than 49. And Vegas probably knows that there's Alabama fans that are going to place that bet. And so Vegas is probably hoping that Lafayette covers and they'll win a little bit of money from Alabama fans.
So all Lafayette has to do is make sure they don't get beat by more than 49 points. Is that what it is?
If you get beat 51-3, guess what? You cover.
51-3. Louisiana Lafayette. Hey, you guys that are playing down there, that's the goal today. Get you one field goal, my friends, and
tell the kicker to get warmed up.
Make sure that.
Give us one. That's all we need.
Just give us one field goal kicker and go kicker. Okay, so and then we got Arkansas, Texas A&M. This is going to be at Texas A&M. This Arkansas team is just absolutely incredibly in pain and suffering right now. Are they going to be able to turn it around this season and actually show up for a game?
I don't know. That's a good question. You could say it's another surprise, maybe in the wrong direction, but I didn't expect Arkansas to be this bad. I mean, they got a new head coach, but I didn't know or think there was that much drop-off in talent or whatever's going on over there. I mean, I don't really keep up with Arkansas.
We're at the bottom of the conference. Arkansas has been clearly labeled as the bottom. Now, when we go and look at these games, right, the Ragin' Cajuns in Arkansas, Texas A&M, that is going to be on SEC Network. Ragin' Cajuns versus Alabama apparently is important enough to make ESPN. Not really sure why that is. Michael, am I right in that? Can you check your handy-dandy newspaper to make sure that that's the case? If not, we need to go on technology to make sure that I'm not smoking something.
No, and that's all because Alabama. It's Alabama. I mean, they're going to be on ESPN or CBS. They're going to be on one of the main channels.
Because everybody's watching.
Yes.
Everybody's watching.
I mean, they have a big enough following fan base. It's going to get ratings even at 11 o'clock. But I guess the only thing other than the spread, you still have the quarterback situation with, I'm not even going to, Tua is his first name. I can't even begin to say his last name.
Well, and I've got bad news,
Hurts.
Michael. Apparently I'm an idiot, and these are wrong. So when we look at this should be actually the other way around. Okay. So that makes more sense. I knew there was something wrong with me. That should be SEC Network for the Louisiana Lafayette, Alabama. And then the Arkansas, Texas A&M is being broadcast on ESPN.
Okay. It makes sense, but I mean, with Alabama, it still wouldn't surprise me if that was what they were playing at 11 o'clock on ESPN.
Just a lot of Alabama fans out there that are rooting for their big boys to make it happen.
That's right.
Well, moving on with the other games that we've got going on. What we got next? We got some pain and suffering coming up for my Volunteers. After what they did at Florida, can Tennessee come back and actually make a showing against Georgia after pain and suffering. This is going to be Coach Pruitt's moment of truth, right? Can you turn the team around after what happened last week?
Yeah, I don't know. That was I don't think anybody expected that. I think most of your expert analysts and from your experts to down to your fans thought it would have been a closer game. I mean, I don't even think you got out of the gate. I think halftime 23-3, 26-3 maybe. It wasn't even close to begin with, and which was surprising. I know Tennessee's down, but I didn't expect that.
I can't begin to express my pain and suffering because of the fact that I've seen so many, it was crazy back when we had all these coaching changes. And I thought for sure we get Fulmer in there, we'll build some stability, the fan base will be back on board. And the number of people posting things like, oh, Tennessee dumpster fire, Tennessee's falling apart, the collapse of the Vols, blah, 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 blah. And these were not people that are anti-Tennessee. These are Tennessee fans.
Yeah.
Now, I understand the frustration, right? Mm-hmm. But you've got to look at what Pruitt is walking into, right? What is he walking into?
I agree. I being an outsider as far as not a UT fan, you kind of watch. It's the third game into the season. You're 3 games in. Granted, it didn't look good against Florida, and even UTEP, you should have beat them, But it's first year. It's his first year head coaching ever. I don't compare him and Derek Mason as far as their abilities. I don't know. Pruitt may be better, and it may show in the long run. But I remember Derek Mason at Vanderbilt. His first year, he was coming from Stanford, and as a head coach, he looked like he had no clue. Now, I know Pruitt knows it's the SEC, and he's been around. But it's got to be an adjustment from going from coordinator to head coach, where and I think he said as much. He's got to not just focus on defense. He's got to look at the offense too, and have some say and help the coordinators there. So it's an adjustment period. I would tell UT fans. Of course, it's a Vandy fan that doesn't know what winning is too much, but. Anytime you have a first-year head coach, you got to give them some time. I mean, if it's the last game of the year and it still looks like this, then start kind of getting upset. But I think you got to have some patience.
When we look at this schedule, though, what are we looking at with Tennessee, right? Coming out of that Florida game, now Tennessee comes into the grinder, right? I mean, we're talking about this is if there's going to be pain and suffering, it's about to come. Because Tennessee is facing number 2 Georgia, followed by number 10 Auburn, followed by number 1 Alabama. And if you can win any of those, maybe Pruitt re-earns his stripes. All he has to do is win one of those 3, and now he is back to, hey, you're a good coach again. And all of a sudden, all those dumpster fires turn into celebrations and excitement.
And I think that's probably why a lot of fans are taking the Florida loss hard, is because out of these 5 games, this stretch, which is probably one of the toughest stretches on a schedule in the country, if not the toughest, they were figuring on pulling out a victory against Florida was their best bet, because I think it's Georgia. I think there's 4 more. I mean, they could go
Georgia, Auburn, Alabama, South Carolina.
Yeah.
And then, of course, they've got Kentucky, who now has got strength and is looking pretty stout, right? To close out the season with a Kentucky, Missouri, Vanderbilt. Missouri and Vanderbilt, they may be falling off of a whipping by Kentucky and wondering what in the world happened to them this year. And then they may fall into a Missouri who desperately needs a win, and a Vanderbilt who's closing out a season thinking, ooh, fresh meat.
Yeah, well, and I mean, depending on what Vandy does and even Missouri, that late in the year, they may be looking at getting their 6th win and becoming bowl eligible. So it's not going to get easier, even though those 2 teams will be teams that they could beat. But as bad as this sounds, realistically, I mean, Tennessee may only win 1 more game, and I think they got Charlotte left. That's the only one for sure that you can count.
The rest of them, the question is, can Tennessee survive? That's
the
question. Now, when you're facing that Georgia team, what are we looking at here with Georgia, right? I mean, they are a stout team, are they not?
Oh, yeah, they are. I think, I can't begin where Tennessee should focus on first. I mean, I think you would hope to keep it. You better play defense. Georgia's defense is pretty good. If you can keep it low scoring, I think with any chance for Tennessee to win, you got to – I'm not sure about their offense. I mean –
has Tennessee got the defense to hold up?
I don't know. You hope
after
with
what
Pruitt,
we saw last week, you would hope that he'd get it together.
Well, and being a defensive coordinator, I mean, I think that's where you hope the improvement comes. And because I don't think they're going to be able to hang in a shootout. I mean, Garantano's decent. He seems better than last year. But Tennessee's not winning a lot of shootouts, I don't think.
So when we look at Georgia's schedule, right, they got Tennessee, Vandy, and then they start their fun stretch with LSU. Florida's going to have something to prove by the time they get there. Kentucky's going to have something to prove by the time they get there. And then you got Auburn. Good Lord. I mean, this is welcome to the SEC, right? Welcome to the SEC.
Yeah. And
if Georgia wins out, you know, they've definitely earned their stripes to be number 2, if not number 1.
Yeah, I don't think unless Alabama were to slip up and lose, they're not jumping Alabama. I don't think so. They'd
have their chance. The SEC Conference Championship.
Oh yeah, that would be their chance then. Yeah, and even then at that
another
point,
two-time matchup, right? They face off in the Conference Championship, and then they turn around and face off in the National Championship.
Yeah, I'd say that is a good bet to happen in some way. I think because if Georgia wins out and you both have Georgia, Alabama's undefeated going into the SEC championship, well, I think they're both in. It doesn't matter which one loses that game. You're in the playoff at that point. And then, I mean, certainly you don't. If you're Georgia or Alabama, I don't see either one of them going, well, I'm just going to kind of relax my way through this game and prepare for the playoff. I think they're both going to try to win. But, I mean, technically, if one of them loses, it ain't hurting them.
It ain't hurting them, no. Unless Georgia loses to Kentucky.
Yeah. Hey, it could be a possibility. I mean, I think it's a stretch.
Would this be the blue wave versus the red wave, right?
Yeah.
It's an interesting conversation. Okay, so moving on through the schedule. You want to talk on this one still?
Yeah, well, I want to we skipped over, I think, the lines on these real quick. I want to touch
Arkansas, Texas A&M.
21-point favorite Texas A&M is. I think they cover. But it's just seems like early on.
Favorite Texas A&M over Arkansas.
Yeah. And I feel like last week and even this week, there's been some in-conference spreads. Like there's a little, from top to bottom, a little off balance there. There's been some big spreads. And then going to Tennessee and Georgia there, you want to take a guess what that spread is?
I would like to know. It seems like it would be big right now.
31 points.
I feel like it should be even bigger, honestly, after the way I saw them play last week.
Well, it opened up, meaning Sunday, Vegas opened the spread, and it's been bet down. They had Georgia opened up at 33 points, and I guess
so it's coming down a little bit.
The money has been falling on Tennessee, yeah. And I thought, you know, when I first saw this, my first thought was, when's the last time Tennessee was a 30-point underdog? But it was last year against Alabama. But that's not a surprise because last year Alabama.
Poor Smokey.
Oh, it was most any teams in the SEC. I know Vandy was 30-something to Alabama. I mean, most teams, unless you're Georgia, you're going to be 20, 30-point underdogs to Alabama. That's not necessarily a bad thing on UT, but, well, maybe it is. I'm not a fan.
So the question is, since you're not a fan, Michael, you know that I'm gonna have to pull for my Vols, even though I don't know that if they cover, I'll be fine with that.
I got them circled. I've got UT to cover. I mean, they got pride still. They got to come out and play at some point.
They got to show their fan base that they still know how to play ball.
Yeah, and you just go to from a player standpoint. They don't like they care. I guarantee you the players care. Even when I played pickup basketball, I didn't want to get beat. The game meant nothing, but they got a lot more on the line. I guarantee you.
I felt like before that Florida game, there was a lot of trash talking from Tennessee people. And,
that's yeah.
And it's that fan base, right?
Mm-hmm.
Talking it up.
Yeah.
But I suspect that talk is really gone now, and I would hope that the guys would have enough pride to step up to the plate and say, "Look, we're going to give Georgia a run for their money, and we're going to make sure that they earn their number 2."
Yeah, yeah. That's what you hope for too, and I kind of look for him to play pretty decent.
And maybe that was the break-in, right? That's the first test of the Pruitt team.
Yeah.
Right, the first legitimate test of the team.
Oh yeah.
And now maybe they'll learn from their mistakes and show up to do what they need to do.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so are we ready to move on?
Yeah. I just wanted to get those in there.
Get those spreads in. I got it. And get your picks in, right?
Yeah. Texas A&M, and I picked Tennessee to cover.
So picks Texas A&M and Tennessee to cover. Here we go. Now looking at the rest of the lineup, we're looking at Southern Miss at number 10 Auburn, and I want to make sure once again that I'm not missing something here. Apparently, I'm not on top of my stuff today, but both of these are showing up as SEC network, and I believe one of them is the main network, and then one of them is the sub network. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Michael?
yeah, an alternate, and I don't know if they do that by region or. More than likely, my guess is Auburn and Southern Miss will be on the main network, and then the alternate channel will be Vanderbilt, TSU.
So what are we looking at here? Is this what is accomplished by either one of these games for either one of these teams? I mean, we're talking about number 10 Auburn. Is this a warm up for their next game?
Yeah, I would say so. I don't know who's next week. I would say it's got to be an SEC team. We're getting into the meat of the conference here.
Next week for Auburn is going to be Mississippi State.
Okay, yeah.
So, and Mississippi State is ranked 23. And when we look at State, I mean they've showed up some, but if I remember correctly, this is one of Kentucky's big accomplishments, is it not?
Oh, beating Mississippi State, yeah, last week. So I don't know that means that Mississippi State's not as good. I just think it's Kentucky proven to be better than anyone has expected. I think they're a decent team, and Stoops has coached them up.
So is Auburn going to be expecting that? Hey, we're going to use this Southern Miss game as a warm up for Mississippi State. Is that what this is?
Yeah, I think so. It's 27-point favorite Auburn. I think I don't know what Southern Miss. They're in Conference USA, I believe, with MTSU and North Texas and Western and all them. It's a decent conference, but I think Auburn covers.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then Vanderbilt, Tennessee State. This is that hometown Nashville game in the backyard. Everybody's in the backyard, and they're going to be playing at Vanderbilt. Is TSU going to be something to give Vandy a run for their money and be a shocker for them?
I don't think so. It may be close in the first, maybe into the second quarter. Halftime might be 14 points or something, but I think Vandy pulls away. They haven't shown.
Is this a question of depth for TSU?
Yeah, it's a depth and a talent. I think overall, top to bottom, Vanderbilt is superior as far as to them, because I mean TSU's I say Division II FCS school, and there's not a spread. There might be the day of the game a spread come out, but there's no spread because it's a FBS against an FCS team.
So after this TSU game, Vandy's got some opportunities to prove their chops. They'll be facing Georgia number 2 right after that.
Yeah.
And then following that with Florida, then following that with Kentucky, right? So, You're looking at who legitimately that's their side of the conference back to back to back.
Yeah, it gets a little tougher for them. And the Georgia game, I don't think it would be a shock. I mean, obviously,
Vandy showed off some more shocks at the last minute where they just slightly lose to a big time team.
But I think Florida, and then usually in a traditional SEC year, you go, okay, for a Vandy fan, you look at Kentucky, Missouri,
you look to
as
those
your
teams
wins.
as your wins.
But now looking at Kentucky, that's going to be tougher. I would say Vandy may have a better chance of beating Florida than Kentucky.
That Kentucky, I tell you that Kentucky ranked number 17. I still can't get over that. The basketball team playing football. What a shocker. Okay,
that's right.
Are we ready to move on, or do you have
there's
spreads on
nothing
these two?
exciting in these two.
Okay, and did we talk about the spread on the Vandy TSU? Is
there isn't one.
There is none.
Yeah, so.
It shows the importance of that game. Okay, when we look at Florida at number 23, Mississippi State. I don't know that this. I think I'm really missing the boat here. I don't think this is on ESPNU. This game is actually on ESPN.
Man, you are slacking today.
I'm really slacking off. It's one of those
things. Dock your pay.
I know it. That $0. We're gonna have to dock the $0. This is driving me crazy though, Michael. So I cannot continue to be wrong. So we're gonna go ahead and fix this
ESPN
to ESPN. So. When we look at it, right, the fact that this is on a full-blown ESPN means that there is some purpose behind this.
Oh yeah.
And so when we look at Mississippi State has really got something to prove at this point. And I'm trying to remember what did we look at whenever we talk about Mississippi State's record so far. What have they done and where are they at today? Is this something to pay attention to?
Yeah, I think so. This is just like Kentucky beating Florida and then Mississippi State. I think you're looking at this to see is Mississippi State what they were picked to be, or are they just pretenders? And that being said, I think if Florida goes up to Mississippi State and wins, then State's not where everyone thought they were. They're probably down.
And you look at it, right? I mean, they've played SF Austin, Kansas State, Louisiana, Ragin' Cajuns again. They're the ones who beat up on the Ragin' Cajuns.
They're the punching bag.
They're
of
the punching bag of the SEC, right? So when we look at it, right, they've beat up on three teams. I don't know about Kansas State because I don't really follow their record or where they're at right now.
Big 12, yeah.
That was a pretty big beatdown. And then they got to Kentucky, and it was almost like the opposite reverse. And so now we're going to be facing Florida, and we're going to find out if Mississippi State really is a number 23 team.
Yeah.
I feel bad for Texas A&M, who fell out of the top 25 rankings after losing to number 1 Alabama. And then we're sitting here looking at a Mississippi State team that's really not been tested and lost to Kentucky, but somehow they're still 23.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't even really look at that way until you brought that to my attention, and that seems a little strange. I would have thought that Texas A&M, because their only other loss was to, at the time, number 2 Clemson. So I'm thinking Texas A&M may be better than what we think. They've just had 2 tough games early on, and losing to Alabama and Clemson's nothing to be ashamed of.
They lost big to Alabama. You know, it was a 23-45. But that Clemson game was close, was it not?
Oh yeah. They had a shot to win, and I don't think everybody's losing bad to Alabama. Yeah, so.
And I think they've got the chance to get back in that top 25 ranking set.
I think
easily.
So.
And they're going to be facing Kentucky after they get done with Arkansas. So that'll be an interesting dynamic with A&M, where they have an opportunity to really shine after whipping up on Arkansas. I don't think that's even going to be a questionable game.
I think these last 3 games here, which will be the evening games on Saturday here, are going to be pretty interesting games. Florida, starting with this Florida Mississippi State. and then you go. I can't remember right after, and then you got Kentucky and you got LSU, Ole Miss, and then Kentucky, South Carolina. I think you can make a night of watching these 3 games tonight, and I'll be interested to see what happens. But Mississippi State needs to do something, and the spread here is 9. Mississippi State's actually 9-point favorite to Florida, and
I don't know about that being so wide. That seems like a very wide spread.
Yeah.
After seeing Florida beat up on Tennessee, and the assumption is that, Florida lost to Kentucky. So now we've determined that, hey, because anybody loses to Kentucky, if you lose to Kentucky, you suck.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they want to sit there and say, well, Kentucky's now number 17 in the country.
Yeah.
So you tell me, what is it? What is the truth? Is Kentucky good, or are they not good? Is Florida good, or are they not good? Right? These are going to be the deciding factors on the East.
Well, this game too is Kentucky beat both these teams, and so I think it'll be a good game. I think these two, Mississippi State and Florida, I have Florida covering. I don't know that they win on the road at Mississippi State, but 9 points seems a little.
I've heard that State is a very intimidating place to play. Although, Florida usually gets the benefit of being in the swamp, and it didn't seem like that happened this year.
I don't know about intimidating. I would say annoying. I've actually been to a Mississippi State game. This is back, I want to say like 07, 08. Vanderbilt started out 5-0, and they had gotten up to 13th in the country. And me, my wife, and my cousin drove down to Mississippi State. And I think State was not that good that year. And,
State's the Cowbells.
They ended up, the Cowbells. We went to that game. And the funniest thing about that is all over the stadium before you walk in, and even as you get into the game, it says no cowbells. No cowbells allowed. Cowbells prohibited. Well, you got them taking the tickets. They got cowbell holsters, like pistol holsters. People walking in with their cowbells on their hips. And you're like, I mean, it's laughable. It's hilarious.
So the signs everywhere say no cowbells, and everybody's got them like brandished.
Oh, they got holsters. It's like they're bringing their pistol in, but it's a cowbell. And, man, it is every third down when, the opposing team, in this case, Vanderbilt would have the ball, and on third down, man, it was this buzz. And we had people, they weren't like rude or anything. They're just ringing their cowbells. And it's loud, and it's annoying more than anything.
Is it because the conference doesn't allow the cowbells?
Supposedly,
so they have to officially put the signs up, and then everybody gets they kind of turn the blind eye to it. Is that what it is?
That's exactly what it is. But that's what I like about the SEC. That's what's cool, though. Is like, okay, yeah, technically it's probably whatever against the rules, but that's what makes it the passionate fans, and that's what makes SEC, in my opinion, one of the things that and because it's unique. Every conference, every stadium in the conference, every team has something unique when you go, and that's what makes it so hard to win on the road sometimes. So I wouldn't say necessarily intimidating, but it can be a tough place to play when those cowbells get to buzzing, because it can be loud.
Oh, the cowbells of Mississippi State. Yeah. Keep them going, guys. Keep them going. Okay, so what are we looking at on the spread? You said 9 points.
Yeah,
on this
Mississippi
one, right?
State's 9-point favorite.
And you're picking Florida to cover.
Yeah.
Okay.
Close
this will be on ESPN, ladies and gentlemen, 5 p.m. Central Standard Time, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay, now for the fun. Oh, yes. The Kentucky story continues. Right, so South Carolina finally has their chance to show Kentucky how it's done. This will be on SEC Network. So obviously the major networks, once again, don't think Kentucky is important and are putting this as a subsidiary game, that it's not an important game. But I suspect that our Kentucky story is going to be a surpriser when we've got a number 17 ranked Kentucky right now. And South Carolina, what are we looking at here with this South Carolina team?
I think South Carolina's decent. They kind of got run over by Georgia, but I mean, again, I think Georgia's getting like Alabama. If you get blowed out by either one of those, it's not a shameful deal there. They're just that good, and and that's what every team is aiming to get to. So,
is this South Carolina's chance to try to prove themselves? Because they faced off Georgia, but then they went to what, Vanderbilt?
Yeah, and they won at Vanderbilt with I think it ended up.
It was a convincing win at 37-14.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
So, it's not – now that, once again, it is Vanderbilt. I know it's your boys.
I think it's a okay win. I think Vanderbilt is improved. And I think it's, a respectable win.
The question is, with this Kentucky team being Kentucky, does it even matter if it's at Kentucky?
Oh, it helps. And I looked this up, and last week's game when Mississippi State came to Kentucky, because Kentucky has in the past had troubles like Vandy as far as getting fans to show up to football games. But last week they had, I don't know what their stadium holds, but for the game they had 60,000 was the attendance for that game last week. And
60,000 show up for a Kentucky game?
Yeah, Kentucky. And so my guess is that's probably almost a sellout, and I would expect the same for this game here, because Kentucky beats South Carolina. You're looking at 3-0, and in my opinion, they could run the table until they get to Georgia, and then that sets up some reason they pull a Georgia upset. I mean, you're looking at Kentucky going the SEC championship game.
Well, clearly everybody else is looking up to see what Kentucky's stadium capacity is right now, because it comes up very quickly on Google search.
Oh, yeah?
But when we look at it, right, interestingly enough, people also search for Rupp Arena, and it seems that Rupp Arena is coming up more. But when we look at it, we've got 67,000 stadium capacity there. And so that's not chump change.
No, and I would look for it to get closer. I think it was 60,700 or something for last week's game, and I bet they get closer to that 67,000 this week.
Interestingly enough, when you search for Kentucky, the next one that comes up is Davis Wade Stadium. That's going to be the stadium for Mississippi State. So, that now we're starting to see. But I didn't even realize that apparently Kentucky's stadium is actually called Kroger Field.
That's fairly new, yeah. It used to be the Commonwealth Stadium, I believe.
That's interesting.
So they've sold naming rights, I guess, make a little extra money.
Formerly known as Commonwealth Stadium.
There you go. See, I'm up to date on my stadium.
Kroger, thank you so much for sponsoring Kentucky football. This is going to be one of those years where you're going to now be able to say that we sponsored the SEC championship for the first time in I don't know how long. So congratulations, Kroger. And, I find it ironic that the Kroger colors are also blue.
Oh, yeah. That's a match.
It's a match made in heaven,
That's
especially
right.
for this year. Good
That's
job,
right.
Kroger. Good pick. Whoever at Kroger decided to sponsor the field, this is the time to do it. That's for dang.
They lucked out on that.
Okay, so that's probably going to be money well spent. Money well spent. So what are we looking at on a spread on this South Carolina at Kentucky?
It opened up as a pick'em.
So for those of you who are big Kentucky fans, I correct myself. South Carolina at number 17, Kentucky.
Yeah, and it's they're 2-point favorites at this point. So Kentucky is. So.
Oh my gosh, poor Kentucky fans. You guys can't ever get anything going for you. You're starting to look good, and no one is convinced. I remember the days back in the '90s when Kirk Herbstreit called Tennessee trailer trash. Starting to look a lot similar, a lot alike.
Well, I mean, history dictates a lot. And when you look back, I mean, Kentucky, they don't have a lot to go on. And so, I mean, there's still some doubts there. But for me,
this new coach is making magic happen.
I think it's 3 years now.
And there's some serious tradition behind his history. So maybe this is Kentucky's way. And, you and I were talking earlier off the mics about how maybe this is the toss-up, right? This is when we see new conference realignments. We see new teams that are coming to the forefront. And if there's any time for Kentucky to step up to the plate and make things happen, and go to their, I believe it's their first SEC championship.
You think, you're calling it now? You think they're going to go?
This is, Brian Fraser's going to hate me right now because he's the biggest Georgia fan known to mankind. But, I'm starting to, you know how I am with underdogs. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking that all the fans listening to the show right now are all going online right now and Googling, has Kentucky won an SEC championship? Let's see what we got.
No.
My gosh. Oh my gosh. Has Kentucky ever beat Florida in football is the first one that comes up. The second one is the most important. Has Kentucky legalized weed? Has Kentucky legalized weed? So clearly no one is concerned about whether or not Kentucky has ever gone to the SEC championship. Has Kentucky ever won a national championship in football? Oh my gosh. So beat Florida comes up. So has Kentucky ever? So Michael, here we go. This is the game today.
Okay.
The game today. The question is, has Kentucky ever? So number one, what would you say? The number one, has Kentucky ever?
Beat Florida.
Has Kentucky ever beat Florida in football? That is the number one search.
Yes.
What
you
is
want
the
me
number?
To answer these? I can answer.
What is the number two search? Has Kentucky ever?
Legalized weed.
Directly on Google. Well, actually, it's not ever. It was has Kentucky legalized weed. But when we start talking about has Kentucky ever, the number two has Kentucky ever.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're getting past has Kentucky legalized weed. We're talking about has Kentucky ever.
All right.
Has
I
Kentucky
get past
ever?
That.
I know I can't either.
Turn the bluegrass to the green grass.
That's right. Oh boy, turn the bluegrass to the green grass. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, this is really getting in the pit right now. Okay, so now we're looking at number two, Michael. What has Kentucky ever? Has Kentucky ever
won a SEC championship?
Okay, number two is actually has Kentucky ever won a national championship in football? Now, what that gives me a suggestion of is that there is somebody out there that is searching to see if Kentucky's going to go to the national championship.
Yes, somebody. Their fan base, I guarantee
somebody in their fan base is wondering if this is the year that Kentucky goes to the national championship.
No, I'll answer that.
So now when we talk about Kentucky football, can they, right? Is it possible that Kentucky can go to the national championship? Let's look at it. So the next game, right? This game coming up is South Carolina. They beat South Carolina. Let's say they beat Texas A&M. Another potential. Let's say they beat Vanderbilt. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
Let's say they beat Missouri. I could definitely see that. Now they've got their one challenge preventing them from going to the national championship. That is Georgia.
Yeah.
They beat Georgia, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say they do. Number 2 in the country.
Yeah.
Tough road on that one.
Yeah.
But that's the barrier that's preventing them. Then they face Tennessee, who is down. Then they play MTSU and Louisville.
Yeah. They're done.
Now, Louisville might be one of those things, kind of like an Auburn-Alabama game, where Louisville comes to play thinking this is our chance to take down rival Kentucky.
But that doesn't hurt them in the conference.
That doesn't hurt them, even if they lose it.
Even if they lose.
But it would hurt them for a national championship.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So let's assume they run the table on the rest of the schedule. They barely beat Georgia, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. All they got to do is barely beat Georgia, because if they barely beat Georgia, guess where they go? They go to the SEC championship.
Yeah.
Right? Now they have a chance in the SEC championship to face a number 1 Alabama, who may actually show up to that game thinking this is Kentucky. Why do we even need to prepare? Now, would Saban ever say that? Probably not. I think you made a comment earlier about how Saban was complaining because there wasn't enough negativity about the players' performance.
Yeah. Off there, I was telling you how not that I ever liked him, but earlier this week he had a press conference and he was asking, or I think he was trying to boss the press around, saying, he said, you need to write something negative so that I will have something to show my players so they don't have such a big head. And I'm thinking, that's not the press's job to help you coach your team. And just the way it comes off, it's like if he asks, he thinks he should get it. And I don't know. That's rubbed me the wrong way, and I'm sure Alabama fans.
He is the coach that is dominating everything, so he gets whatever he wants.
He's doing something right. I mean, he's a great coach. He's
but
probably
how
the best
much
coach
of a
ever.
spite? how much of a spite would that be? If Kentucky goes to the SEC championship, Alabama goes thinking this is going to be a chump change game because they just barely beat Georgia and they've not played anybody else. And then they go in there and Alabama screws around.
Yeah.
And then Kentucky lands an SEC title against the number one team in the country.
They're in the playoff then.
Now they're in the playoff, right? So the question is, are they going to face Alabama again in a national championship?
Well, all right. If
and
all that happens,
even if Kentucky loses that SEC championship,
I don't know that they get in. I don't know. It just depends. But I'll give you a scenario. You said all they got to do is beat Georgia. I think there's a scenario out there that I know Georgia has LSU and Auburn on the schedule. Let's say they lose both of those, but beat Kentucky. But Kentucky wins out, and their only SEC losses to Georgia. They're still in. Kentucky's going to win the East, so they have
strength of schedule changing the destination.
Yeah.
For an SEC
and
championship.
It's not crazy to think that Georgia could lose to LSU and Auburn. I don't think they lose both of those, maybe one of them, which makes the Kentucky-Georgia game even that much bigger. But that's a possibility. Georgia loses those two games but still beats Kentucky, but Kentucky's only SEC losses to Georgia, then they're in with just one loss. It doesn't matter at that point.
Yeah, that's a painful thought.
It's early.
Georgia
We're just
fans.
Dreaming right now.
That's a painful thought for Georgia fans, but it is a scenario that could potentially happen. And when we look at this year,
yeah,
I keep staring at the 17 in front of the word Kentucky, and I just think that I'm in some crazy land where it doesn't make any sense.
Or is it just? We're getting crazy with these scenarios, but is it just early and then the SEC world comes back and Kentucky loses this week, loses the next couple.
That's
Vandy
right.
loses.
Who knows what Kentucky's got? Today we'll find out.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so what did we say the spread? We said 9.
2-point favorite.
2-point favorite. Oh, this is a toss-up.
Yeah. It's pretty much a pick 'em. So
wow.
I'm going with Kentucky. I'm gonna ride Cinderella. Cinderella story.
That didn't sound very good, then, Michael.
The Cinderella story. Get your mind out of the gutter, Jared. But no, I'm thinking Kentucky. Because I don't think Florida is as bad as people think they are, and I think Mississippi State's a decent team, and Kentucky has beat them both. I think they're for real now. I don't know that they
South
contend
Carolina
with Georgia.
team, they haven't really had any challenges yet, other than Georgia, and Georgia handled them pretty well.
Yes.
Yeah. They faced off against they've got 1-1, but their one win is against a Vanderbilt team, and that Vanderbilt team is competing for the bottom of the East.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
This is game 2 of a 3 good games in the SEC tonight. So
absolutely. Looking at some excitement. Okay, so when we look at the next game, this is going to be the closer for the evening. And good Lord, if you're in Eastern time, good luck with this one. This one's going to start at 9 p.m. Eastern. But, we are the show broadcasting from the Central Zone.
That's right.
So this one's going to be 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. This one be a good one to go to sleep on, probably. I'm not saying that it's going to be boring, but I suspect that Ole Miss has got their hands full against this number 5 LSU team.
I would agree. I'm still not sold on Ole Miss. They've looked good offensively against teams outside the conference. But again, Alabama played defense, and I think if you got a good defense, which LSU historically, traditionally has, and I think this year they still have a pretty good defense, I think they'll handle Ole Miss. The spread is 12. LSU's a 12-point favorite.
Number 5 LSU is a 12-point favorite over an Ole Miss that can't even go to an SEC championship because of restrictions.
Yeah.
It's really a disappointment when we look at these games where it's a team that knows they can't go anywhere. What do you even play for when you're a player on that team?
Well, and that's where I think you look at the coach, and if Ole Miss wins 8-9 games this year, you got to give it to the coach.
And this is the fill-in coach, right? I mean, this is
no, he's the head coach. He became interim head coach last year, and at the end of the season, in the off season, they gave him. They
decided to give it to him after they got done paying all the players that just left, right?
Yeah. Well, but here's the thing. To me, it's a little bit of a surprise that he got the head coaching job because Hugh Freeze, he's from that coaching staff. So
he's from the staff that did all the craziness, and so he saw it. So what
was it?
Did he know?
Right, exactly. So
was he involved? And now they said, "Oh, that's okay, not a problem. We'll fire the top dog because that's his screw up. Now, whatever you didn't do, you weren't forking out the cash, and so that's okay. You can do whatever you want to do."
Yeah.
I don't think it sends a good message in the SEC when you're doing that.
But.
So the question is Ole Miss going to continue to do sanctions to come, and then all of a sudden now we're still facing Ole Miss issues? I sure hope not, for SEC's sake, because it's really heartbreaking to see a team like this. We're now, we don't have anything to play for. Yeah. I want every team in the SEC coming to every single game.
Well, and to me, how they get through these, I guess – this is the last year because last year they weren't bowl eligible, and this year they're not going to be bowl eligible or postseason eligible. But next year they will be. How's that? It has to hurt recruiting. Of course, he's now on the back end. They get through this year, they're back in contention. But I know if I'm another SEC coach and I'm recruiting a player that Ole Miss was recruiting, especially in the off season last year, I'm using that against them. I'm saying, hey, they can't go to. You want to go to a bowl game? They can't.
And then Ole Miss says, "That's okay, Coach. You go ahead and tell them that. We'll pay them another $5,000 real quick. Here's some more cash."
Yeah. So,
Ole Miss fans are hating me right now. I'm sure they're really hating me right now.
Truth hurts, right? That's what they did.
Well, and there was a lot of rumors. I remember the rumor mill back in the day. About the challenges between Fulmer and I remember the SEC media days, I think, were held in Alabama, and Alabama fans said something about if Fulmer crossed the line, they were going to arrest him. The police, the state troopers were going to arrest him.
Yeah.
And so I think Fulmer didn't actually go to SEC media days that year, which, it's craziness. But there was accusations back then that there were things going on at Tennessee. And so it's hard to look at all these players that are playing in such a big-time conference now, and there's so much on the line. How do you expect them to continue to go, oh, yeah, okay, well, we are poor and broke, and we expect to do all this for these teams that are making millions of dollars?
Yeah. Well, I think we would be foolish, and I think a lot of fans turn the blind eye. But if you look at it, I guarantee every school in the SEC and probably across, not every school in the country, but it's going on a lot more than we know. And if everybody got honest, it would be amazing how much money going under the table to these players across the country. I guarantee it's a lot. A lot of schools are doing it. I could be wrong, but I bet we'd be surprised.
Yeah, it is what it is.
You hate to tank college football that way, but I mean, and maybe it's not, but that's just the feeling I have. I mean, I like to watch them and think they're just playing because they love it, and they got scholarship, and it's
that's right. They just want the academics,
right, right.
Of course, if they wanted that, maybe they'd be at Vanderbilt.
Yeah. I would say even now, Vandy is probably obviously not to the standard of anybody else in the SEC, but
Vandy's accommodating to get better players, I would say.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying accommodating. I think all the teams do everything they can to recruit good players because they've got to be competitive. You can't just skate through.
Oh yeah, no, you can't.
So this Ole Miss team has what to play for against the number 5 LSU. Is this? I don't understand why this is such a late night game. It seems like it's going to be an LSU fan game. That's what this is, right?
Well, it may be close, but I just think LSU will. Well, LSU has a way to make every game interesting, even if Les Miles isn't on the sidelines. He used to make all their games interesting, but I think the style they play, it's defense, keep it low scoring. We're gonna make it look ugly. And now this is a place I'd love to go. LSU on a Saturday night. They say it is
an incredible place to watch a game.
It's just crazy too. The atmosphere and just the whole show that goes with it. They say it is on a Saturday night. It's rocking up there. So it will be fun for the fans that are there, and I just look for them to pull away late. I think they cover the 12. I think they got a decent offense, and somehow Orgeron is making it work there.
Oh boy, and it's LSU is notorious for the making the game ugly. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know how they do it, but that somehow they still pull it out, even when it looked like they didn't know what they were doing.
This almost slipped my mind, but can you answer this? Has Ed Orgeron been a head coach anywhere else in the SEC?
Oh, I'd have to search that one. I have no clue.
Ole Miss.
You're kidding me.
Mm-mm. I can't believe I didn't think it. Yeah. Man, it's been.
So this is for him. This is going to be a big pride thing.
Yeah. So I think.
And Orgeron was the one that Ole Miss said bye-bye to, wasn't he?
Yeah, because he did. I read a book on him with his days at Ole Miss. It was called, and it had to do with recruiting. And I cannot remember the name of the guy that wrote the book. And I can't believe Orgeron let him follow him the whole year, but he let him follow him around on the recruiting trail. Jeez. And it didn't paint him in a bad light, but there were some things in there I was surprised that they let go. And Orgeron kind of he's buddies with Kiffin. They're from that, we'll grease your palms.
University of Southern California, the other USC.
Yep. Yeah, the other, and Pete Carroll, I think that's why he's in the pros. I think they have some dirty recruiting tricks that they do and they pull. And from reading that book, I don't want to say, I think it was Bruce Feldman, but I don't remember if that was him who wrote the book. But it's called Meat Market, and it was a good read on recruiting and whatnot.
That's interesting because you mentioned that Orgeron was at USC.
Yeah.
And you got me really curious. So Orgeron was at USC as an interim head coach, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then he went to Ole Miss.
Yep.
And was at Ole Miss. But interestingly enough, can you tell me where he was born and grew up?
He's from Louisiana, right?
He is.
He's a Cajun. You hear him talk.
He is a Cajun. In fact, his father was B.B. Orgeron and his mother was Coco Orgeron. And so they are serious business. In fact, he grew up in La Rose, which is a town on the Bayou Lafourche in Lafourche Parish, Louisiana. And I'm probably totally destroying that.
Yeah.
But I find that very fascinating that this probably was his real dream job.
Oh yeah, I would think so. And so far he's making the best of it. I mean, got a number 5 ranking. And do you should know this, where did he coach? He's coached as an assistant in the SEC before this. Oh, come on. You probably forgot about it. Yeah.
Not at Tennessee. Please tell me not at Tennessee.
You're
Kiffin
kidding days.
Me. The Kiffin era. Mm-hmm. Of course he was with Kiffin.
Yeah, Kiffin and Orgeron were together at USC. That's where they came up, coaching-wise.
They were the buddies. Huh?
Yeah, and so when Kiffin got the job, I want to say Orgeron was the defensive coordinator. I could be wrong. No.
So I'm looking it up right now because you got me curious now, and you got me really kind of having some heartbreak as well. So 2008, it was announced that Orgeron had been hired as the new defensive line coach of the NFL's New Orleans Saints.
Oh, wow.
That was in January. On December 31st, 2008, Orgeron accepted a position with the University of Tennessee under its new head coach, former USC assistant coach, colleague, Lane Kiffin.
Yep.
He worked as associate head coach, recruiting coordinator, and defensive line coach. And then when our friend Kiffin decided to take a leave, guess where Ogeron decided to go to USC.
Yep.
And
do you remember that it was rumored, and I wouldn't put it past them, but overnight when they left, they were making calls on UT issued cell phones to recruits to say, hey, follow us to USC, decommit, or the ones that hadn't committed, hey, come.
You know, I have blotted that time period out in my memory and in history. You know, the Kiffin era. There is some pain and suffering there. I will never forget seeing all the signs of students that said things about Lane Kiffin that should not be put on any media outlet whatsoever.
Yeah.
And somehow, I don't know how I saw those signs. But it's, you know, that was a painful time period for the University of Tennessee. And here lately, I feel like everything has been a painful time period.
Yeah. If he wouldn't have bolted, because I think USC was Kiffin's dream job, and that turned into crap. But if he would have stayed at UT and they would have let him, he would have got players, and it would have been interesting. I think he would have got them winning pretty quick and turned around into a powerhouse, I believe. Now, he would have gotten UT in trouble, I think, with some NCAA sanctions of their own. We talk about Ole Miss. I think they would have gotten in trouble, but they would have had a team in a couple years of him being there.
I tell you what, I see a trend. I just realized when we talk about that Kiffin tie connecting into Ogeron, you know, Kiffin is now at Florida Atlantic, and I see a trend under our friend at Alabama that seems to be very prevalent. People go there, but they don't stay there.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's because, well, you can look at it two ways. In my opinion, I think, because I think they learn under Saban, and Saban's a hot commodity. Anybody that comes out of there, I mean, Pruitt. Tennessee
so you think it's a recruiting? You think it's a recruiting thing? Because the teams are recruiting out from underneath Kiffin because of the results that he's producing.
Oh yeah, I mean, Kiffin's time with Saban at Alabama, I think he learned some things. He might not, you know, he's a pretty prideful dude, but I think Kiffin learned under Saban, and I think he'll continue to do well at Florida Atlantic, and I bet he'll get another shot in a Power 5 school, I believe.
So looking at Florida Atlantic, which is a totally off the record here, off the line of SEC, just because it's curious. Florida Atlantic has played at Oklahoma, 14-63 loss. Then they played versus Air Force, beat Air Force, beat a Bethune-Cookman, whatever. And then they played UCF, University of Central Florida.
I think they
got beat pretty badly.
Yeah.
And guess who they turn out against next?
I think it's MTSU.
It sure is. They face off against MTSU. Now they've started their Conference USA schedule.
Yeah. Well, they won Conference USA last year with Kiffin. If I remember, went to a bowl game. I mean, he had a good year. It was his first year last year, I believe, and they won 9 games. I don't know that they beat anybody, upset anybody crazy, but they.
And if you're at a Florida Atlantic and you can recruit anybody that's any good, just based on his past history, I think that's a strong recruiting tool.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So let's see here. So has Kentucky ever? Now we're going to look at has Ole Miss ever? Here we go. So now, number 1, has Ole Miss ever? Go.
Won an SEC championship.
Let's see. No. That is no, that is not on the list.
Have they ever won a national?
Has Ole Miss ever played in the SEC championship? That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
Okay, try again for number 1. Go.
Has Ole Miss ever won at LSU?
That is not number one, and there's no mention of LSU anywhere in the list.
I
but
don't
has
know.
Ole Miss ever beat Alabama?
Oh, yeah, I believe.
And that is the number one on the list. The question is, when does Ole Miss even face Alabama?
Well, every year, right?
Right. So when are they going to face them again this year? That's going to be the question that I'm looking for next. And so when we look at that Ole Miss schedule, this is going to be their big question apparently, which I don't even think that there's going to be a question about this, but they will face Alabama.
No, they got beat by Alabama.
They lost. Right. So that's leftover from have they ever done it?
They're still looking it up down there in Mississippi.
Oh Lord.
They got beat so bad they don't remember.
Alabama has dominated the series and leads 54-10-2.
Oh, wow.
54-10-2. And that series has been going on since 1912.
Oh, wow.
Poor Ole Miss, but the answer to that question is yes, Ole Miss has beaten Alabama. Likelihood is that it happened during that time period when Alabama really sucked.
I think about 3 years ago was the last time. It was when Hugh Freeze was paying players a couple years. That's why they got in trouble.
That's why they got in trouble, and that's also why they won, because they paid some of the players that would have gone to Alabama. Good job. Way to pay them right.
Yep.
Pay them right. I really like this. Has somebody ever? This is going to be something that I think we may just go with. Looking at some of these others, number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The sixth one down is another interesting one that shows up. Has Ole Miss ever been ranked number 1? I don't think so. I don't know.
Well, click on it. Now you got me. I'm going to say yes.
Okay, has Ole Miss ever been ranked number 1? In 1964, Ole Miss was ranked preseason number 1 in the Associated Press poll.
Is that with Archie Manning?
It may have been 1964.
No, that's a little early, ain't it?
Let's see, number 1.
Yeah, that's a little
1964.
Early.
Let's see, number 1. I don't know who was on the team in 1964. But they claimed national titles in 1959, 1960, and 1962.
I claim one, too. The University of Michael Clay won in 1937.
Well, you look at Tennessee. Tennessee claims a bunch of national titles, too. So it's really kind of craziness. But, it is what it is. It is what it is. Now you've got me curious, though, about Archie Manning. That was.
I think that's a little early
the boys
for him.
there.
Yeah,
that was that, and that's kind of the history. Interestingly enough, Archie Manning, 4th in 1969, 3rd in 1970.
Okay. Yeah, I thought.
And this was the. Let's see. Coached 4 players who finished in the top 5 for the Heisman Trophy. So, and there's Archie, we got to get your Wikipedia page up, buddy. Not getting much on you, man. I mean, you're one of the best players in all of history of football, and you produce some great sons. And I'm trying to figure out what in the world.
I need an M&M after that.
Have an M after that one. I can't. I wonder what Archie Manning has. Archie Manning ever been listed on Wikipedia? Of course, the Mannings are all notorious for their NFL work that they did.
Oh yeah.
But when we look at Archie, the Manning boys have been SEC traditions for a significant time. And I'm trying to see, it's got career history with the NFL, and I don't see their college time here. Let's see, college career. Here we go. Archie Manning, Ole Miss for 3 years. First national primetime broadcast of a college football game in 1969. Wow, I didn't realize he was the first college football broadcast nationally. 1969 was Archie Manning. Threw for 436 yards and 3 touchdowns, also running for 104 yards in a 33-32 loss to Alabama.
Oh, okay.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Where'd he go on to play pro? Don't look.
Oh, I New Orleans, isn't it?
Yeah.
Didn't he play
Yeah.
New Orleans? I didn't.
Yeah.
Okay, I can look now though.
Yeah.
So started out with started out with the Saints.
Mm-hmm.
Went, interestingly enough, to the Houston Oilers.
Oh wow.
And then closed out his career at the Vikings. So interesting. Fascinating.
And there's your Archie Manning update, everybody.
Peyton, you're still welcome to come on the show. Thank you very much.
Yes, bring your dad.
Bring Archie. We'll have you.
We'll make room.
It'll be a great show. Great show. Great show. As some other people say, it would be huge. Huge. It will be huge. Okay, so speaking of LSU, going back to the LSU Ole Miss, we were actually talking about a topic that mattered. What does this Ole Miss team look like? Well, they're on probation, right?
Yeah, that's right.
They're all in prison right now, so they can't really actually legitimately play this game. So we're looking at an LSU team that is number 5, and going back to where SEC stands, right? If you look at us nationally, right? LSU's ranked number 5, Alabama number 1, Georgia number 2. Then we look at Kentucky number 17, Mississippi State number 23, Texas A&M was most recently number 22.
You're missing Auburn. I think they're in the top 10 as well.
Auburn is 10. That is correct. Yeah. So 1, 2, 5, 10, 17, and 23.
Yep. And I'll tell you too, a lot of national people, or maybe regional, I don't know about national, but this week listening to some talk shows and sports talk and whatnot, they still don't think LSU, a lot of people aren't giving them credit. They're saying they shouldn't have beat Auburn and they're going to falter. And I'm kind of like I am with Kentucky right now. Until they prove me wrong, I'm gonna ride LSU. I think they're for real. I think for whatever reason, Orgeron's got things going in the right direction. And
LSU does still face Georgia.
Yeah.
And they face Alabama.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they got a tough schedule. But
and they're going to be facing Mississippi State. And they're going to be facing Texas A&M, both of which have been top 25 teams.
But if they come out of all of that with just 2 losses, I mean, that's not a bad.
But they did beat number 6 Washington to open the season.
No, that was Auburn.
Was that Auburn?
Yeah, but LSU beat Auburn. So
this is going to be an interesting dynamic. So is LSU in the driver's seat now?
Yeah, especially after beating Auburn, yes. You're looking at hopefully running the table and then see what you can do against Alabama. I mean, anything can happen if you get to that point. Some reason you win, then you're looking at going to the SEC championship.
So they actually faced off against number 8 Miami. I'm sorry, correction.
and destroyed them. Now I don't know what
how good that Miami team was.
Right, and I think they're still ranked though. Miami's still in the top 25.
Really?
I believe so. I don't know who they played yet, but I think they're like 21 maybe.
That Miami team is still ranked at number 16 at this point.
Okay. Now I don't know.
And I'm looking at their schedule.
Who else have they played?
They lost to LSU. They played Savannah State.
No.
They played Toledo, and they played Florida International.
Oh. Well.
They will face off against. They will face off against North Carolina, Florida State, Virginia, Boston College, Duke, which is ranked number 22. Is that right?
Holy cow!
Whoa. Is Cutcliffe still at Duke? That's got me curious.
Speaking of Ole Miss, yes, Cutcliffe is still at Duke. You know, he coached at Ole Miss, and I think he got a raw deal. He left
Tennessee to go to Ole Miss.
Mm-hmm. And he coached Eli Manning, and the year, I guess Eli's senior or whatever his last year, I don't know if he came out as a junior, but his last year they won 10 games, and then the next year Cutcliffe coached, and I think they won 7 games, and they fired him. And it was like you just lost a great quarterback. You got to give him time, but I think Cutcliffe got a raw deal. I would have held on to him. Because I think he's a great coach.
Cutcliffe was part of the reason why Tennessee did so well in the 90s.
I think so.
I
mean, you look what he's doing at Duke. Come on.
He was a huge part of that. And, if you talk about who do you want to recruit for Tennessee, What Fulmer? Call Cutcliffe.
You know, I bet that conversation's happened, and I think
Cutcliffe said, "No, I'm too good. It's too good at Duke's.
Yeah,
it's too good. All I got to do is win at Duke. I don't have to. I don't have to win a national championship at Duke. If I get number 22 in the country at Duke, I am a winner, and I will have security for the rest of my life."
If he wins 7 games at Duke every other year, they're fine. They're taking that, which is all I would ask for Vandy to do. You win 7 games every other year, I'm fine with it.
Well, and the other thing is that when you're Duke, you know, who are you playing, right? You're not playing SEC teams, and if he can play SEC ball out of Duke, he's going to beat everybody.
Oh yeah. He's a good coach, and just speaking of Ole Miss, I think he got a raw deal. Sorry, Ole Miss fans, but I think he was done wrong.
And that would have been, and that's you talk about an ethical hire.
Oh yeah.
That's an ethical hire. If there's anybody that's an ethical hire, that's one. And maybe
he was too much of a Mr. Clean. Maybe
that may be
because you look now what they've done.
That may be the problem at Ole Miss.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not saying pointing any fingers. You know that you know if I point fingers, I'm sure being a Tennessee fan, I'd get three more fingers pointing back at me. Right.
Yeah.
But when we look at it, right, Duke has already beat Army 34-14. Northwestern they beat 21-7. Baylor they beat 40-27.
So they did.
These are decisive wins against teams that are credible.
Oh yeah, and I know that first game you said against Army, people might laugh at that, but did you see what they did last week, Army?
No, I did not.
At Oklahoma, took them to overtime and lost in overtime, but.
So that's a team that's worth talking about.
Yeah, and we don't talk about it. You know, you think Army, you don't think of anything but the Army-Navy game at the end of the year, and it doesn't matter what the records are. We all watch that game. But, I mean, I don't know what Army's record is. I think they've only lost
right now
maybe to Oklahoma.
They've lost to Duke, and they lost to Oklahoma.
Yeah, and those are respectable.
Oklahoma was only a 28-21. Duke was a 34-14.
Yeah.
Duke slaughtered them.
Yeah, so Army came to play against Oklahoma, and the whole knock. I remember seeing that score last week and hearing them talk about it on TV, and they were making excuses for Oklahoma. I'm not a Big 12 guy, an Oklahoma guy. Sorry, any Oklahoma fans, but they were like, well, you know, anytime you play an option, Army runs the option. Oh, they can hang in there and be close, and it's like, you just saw Duke. What Duke do? They destroyed Army. So Duke played the same team and handled them. Yeah, so it's
thoroughly. Yep.
Yeah, shut up, Oklahoma.
And the Duke will be interestingly enough, Duke will be one of those games that's going to be an ESPN2 game because Duke is facing off against a Virginia Tech team.
Okay.
Next, they do have Miami later on in the schedule, and they have Clemson. So, you know, I hate to get off of SEC, but when we talk about David Cutcliffe.
Yeah,
you know,
it's SEC
he is an SEC boy.
Yeah,
SEC boy, and he is an Ole Miss throwaway, just like Ogeron.
Yeah,
and you look at the number. Point. You look at the number of throwaways that Ole Miss has had. Maybe they need to reevaluate the way that they're picking their coaches and the way that they're making their hiring and firing decisions. And the question then becomes: do you need a new AD?
You can throw. I think you can throw Houston Nutt. He coached at Ole Miss. I don't know if it was after Arkansas or before, because I want to say it was before Arkansas, and Houston Nutt went to Arkansas and did decent after that, I believe. And so there's a trend there, maybe.
Let's see here. We got going way back. I'm trying to look for modern history at Ole Miss. Tommy Tuberville from 1995 to 98. David Cutcliffe from 98 to 2004. When we see Tuberville, where did he go after that is the question. I don't even know.
He bounced around. I know at one time he was at Texas Tech for a little while. I don't know what he did. I don't know what years, but it was definitely after Ole Miss sometime. I don't know exactly where he went, but who was after Tuberville?
Tuberville made a comment. He says, "They'll have to take me out of here in a pine box."
I guess they did. Well,
I guess they did.
Yeah, they got him out there somehow.
Agreed 2 days later to become the head coach of SEC West rival Auburn University. So Tuberville left to go to Auburn after he said they'll have to take him out of there in a pine box. Apparently, he took his pine box with him and moved on. So then we moved into the David Cutcliffe era. And then when we look at Cutcliffe, going back to that conversation, despite his 44-29 record, 5 straight winning seasons, and guiding the team to its first 10-win season in over 30 years, Cutcliffe was fired by Ole Miss's athletic director, Pete Boone. Good job, Pete. Good choice, buddy.
Yeah,
way to go.
Way to direct athletics.
Way to go. Way to go. What a winner. And then we've got Orgeron, right? And then
So was Orgeron after Cutcliffe?
Orgeron came on in 2005. So 2004 was the end of Cutcliffe.
Okay.
Orgeron was 2005 to 2007. And the 2007 was historic one for Ole Miss. Rebels went winless in the SEC.
Yeah.
The Rebels under Orgeron ended the season 3-9, 0-8 in SEC play. The 2007 season culminated with the firing of Orgeron on November 24, 2007. Interestingly enough, where is Orgeron now?
I know.
And what is he doing?
Number 5 LSU.
Right. 3 days later, Houston Nutt was hired as the head football coach.
Where did it? Now I want to know.
Where was Nutt before the question?
Yeah, because I think he went to Arkansas after.
So let's look at Nutt. The hard to crack Nutt. He started actually head coaching career was Ole Miss in 2008 to 2011.
And then
he came from Arkansas.
Oh, he came from.
From Arkansas.
Okay.
2011. I don't even know what did he go to do after that. Currently works for CBS Sports as a college football studio analyst.
And there you go. And there's your Ole Miss history.
Coaching. But it ain't over yet, my friends. Ain't over yet because after Houston Nutt, it was announced that Coach Nutt would resign from the position of head coach at Ole Miss. Resignation became official once the season came to a close as he finished his final 3 games at the university. Then we've got the Hugh Freeze era.
That led them to
the great success that they had, resulting in...
It got them a win against Alabama, but it also got them on probation.
Investigation and discovery of his use of a university cell phone to call an escort service.
Yep. And a lot of people say he was calling them I think he fell on the sword and said he's calling them for himself, but a lot of them say he was calling it for his players too. Like that was one of the reasons of getting players is they would hire escorts for when the players came in to visit the school.
Hugh Freeze. Where did
recruiting's dirty stuff, man.
Where did he come from? That's the question. Where did Hugh Freeze come from? Where did they find Hugh Freeze? With all of his expertise. Here comes the moment of truth.
Yeah. Head
coach at Lambeth University.
You gotta be kidding. He came from Lambeth to Ole Miss? That was the jump?
It says, so here we go. We got tight end receivers coach, 2006, 2007 at Ole Miss.
Okay.
Then was moved as head coach to Lambeth University. What motto is whatsoever things are true? Oh my goodness. Lambeth was hiring Hugh Freeze for whatsoever things are true.
How long did he coach at Lambeth?
He was at Lambeth 2008 to 2009. Apparently that was not a good fit for him.
But he jumped from...
And then he went to Arkansas State as the offensive coordinator.
Okay.
2011, Arkansas State, apparently as head coach.
Yeah.
And then moved from Arkansas State to the Ole Miss position 12 to 16.
Okay. So he was a receivers coach.
So obviously he didn't learn anything at Lambeth.
No.
He did not learn anything at Lambeth.
Our
friends down at Lambeth in Jackson, Tennessee, congratulations for getting rid of that one. That was a good decision.
That's right.
That was a good decision. There's not very many good decisions, but that sure was a good one. And now, interestingly enough, co-offensive coordinator Matt Luke named interim head coach the same day as Freeze resigns, and then was named the permanent head coach. I sure hope to goodness that he did not know anything that was going on with Freeze. But how can your co-offensive coordinator not know what's going on? And how can Ole Miss then say, hey, you know what, we're just going to hire the assistant coach underneath the coach that was corrupt? That
makes you wonder. Like,
this is going to be a questionable, and the question is, hey, are they going to be being investigated more? That's the real question. And I hate to end on a negative note.
That's SEC football, man. There's so much you can talk about. I mean, you could go on for hours of just the history of SEC. It's good stuff. It is. Welcome
to the SEC, ladies and gentlemen. So, closing out, we appreciate you watching the show. This has been a Scott Social Media broadcast. And those of you out there that want to be on the show, we will remind you again, you are welcome anytime, anywhere.
Call us,
This
Peyton.
has been SEC Football Review. Oh, Michael.
We're clear.
Oh, Ogeron. Good old Ogeron.
Yeah.